and welcome. I'm Asima Katauka and you're watching World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines. Gaza Civil Defense reports at least 45 killed in Israeli strikes on Sunday. The Israeli army resumes enforcement of the Gaza ceasefire while reporting 2 soldiers killed in southern Gaza. U.S. advisor Jared Kushner says Israel must improve Palestinian lives to integrate into the Middle East. He stresses the need for joint security and economic opportunity for both sides to live together durably. UNICEF's Peter Hawkins is among 20 UN employees detained by Houthi rebels in Sana'a. The Houthi group holds 15 international workers, including those from WFP and UNICEF, amid increasing operations against international agencies in rebel-held areas. U.S. President Donald Trump has said that he does not want China to play the rare earth game with the U.S. He also believes China will reach a deal on soybeans and wants China to purchase at least as much as before. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that Kyiv is ready to supply drones to the U.S. if Washington provides missiles to Ukraine. Zelensky further added that a contract for 25 Patriot systems is currently in preparation. Germany plans to purchase 15 additional US-made F-35 fighter jets from Lockheed Martin for $2.9 billion, according to parliamentary sources. The move, backed by Defense Minister Boris Pistorius, would bring Germany's total order to 50 F-35s. Thieves execute a 4-minute heist at Paris Louvre Museum, stealing at least 8 priceless jewels from the French crown collection. President Macron condemns the theft, pledging to recover the stolen works. Centrist Rodrigo Paz wins Bolivia's presidential runoff with 54.5% of the vote, defeating conservative Jorge Tuto Quiroga. Paz's victory marks a historic shift away from nearly 2 decades of leftist rule, taking office on November 8th. European Union Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas has expressed concerns over the potential visit of Russian President Vladimir Putin to Hungary for talks on Ukraine. Now, Kaja Kallas has described it as not nice, given that Putin has faced an arrest warrant from the International Criminal Court, which Hungary is in the process of leaving. The question is whether there is any outcome, Kallas has said, questioning the effectiveness of the visit. Let's listen in.
No, it's not nice. I mean, to see that really a person put to the arrest warrant by the ICC is coming to a European country. And again, you know, the question is whether there's any outcome out of this. This is, I think, what we need to see, how these things are going in Budapest, as we have been very firm that Russia only negotiates when they are put under pressure. So we hope that also President
Kallas, speaking ahead of a meeting of EU foreign ministers in Luxembourg, she acknowledged U.S. President Donald Trump's efforts to bring peace to the region. Trump had announced plans to meet with President Putin in Budapest soon. Now, while Kallas welcomed the initiative, she emphasized that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky should also meet with the Russian leader. In related developments, Zelensky has confirmed that he had spoken with French President Emmanuel Macron about applying further pressure on Russia to end the war. President Zelensky noted that they had agreed to meet in the near future to discuss the next steps in their strategy. Lithuanian Foreign Minister Kęstutis Budrys has echoed concerns about Putin's visit, saying there was no place for Putin in any European capital and that the Russian president should face justice in The Hague, not in a European city. In contrast, Dutch Foreign Minister has offered a more pragmatic view. Regarding the possible Trump-Putin talks in Budapest, he has said that the most important thing is that we have a negotiating table. underlining the necessity of dialogue resolving this conflict. Now for this discussion, we welcome Mark Sutherland. He's a geopolitical expert, joins us live from London. Thank you very much, Mark, for joining us again. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank you. Mark, looking at this, it seems like some European countries are criticizing, but some have voiced support or, about the fact that it's necessary for them to hold this talk somewhere in Europe. What do you think about this division between EU or European leaders? And also, what do you think if there was this trilateral talk was to take place? Do you suggest any other better city or state which could welcome these three leaders?
Hi, Zelensky has put forward meeting in other countries, including Qatar, throwing that one in the mix. As the Dutch minister said, having a meeting around a table, that is a good thing. Of course, there is this whole thing of the international court, people turning around and going, Putin should be in The Hague. I am not in any way excusing the fact that there was an invasion on February 22. There is also issues in regard to children that are missing. We look at the devastation in the Ukraine and the amount of people that are being killed on both sides. That is a fact. But we also need people to come round the table to stop this, to end this. Now, it's also been reported in the last couple of days that with President Trump then meeting with Zelensky saying, you're going to have to accept this border, which basically is mooted out there, yet to be really firmed and confirmed in these discussions, say, well, this is how far Russia has come. I've had a chat with Vladimir. Basically, this is the land you will have to give up. If those comments are real, then that has to be then put on the table as well. And of course, Zelensky will not be happy with that at all. But getting people around a table to have a face-to-face discussion is a very important thing. What you have commented on, what you've asked me, where it's the division within Europe, yes, because there is this constant people that turn around and go from maybe they're accused of being populist, maybe accused of being right wing. Then we have within Europe, you have a left-wing socialist mindset. So all of these ideologies will then clash within the European Parliament and then within thinking. But the issue is, as I have said to you a number of times on this channel, is getting people around the table is the most important thing to then end this war as quickly as possible. But I'm not excusing the fact that there was an invasion into a sovereign country on February 2022, and also under the Biden regime, all it was providing ammunition, etc., support for Ukraine, but not actually working out any way to get people around the table to end this. And you have to give President Trump a hat tip to the fact that that is what he is then trying to do, in my opinion. Asuma.
Yes, indeed. It is very important to get these leaders get together and talk for the solution. And this morning we saw this news coming in from Russia that they are looking for a fundamental resolution to this war. How do you think, how would this look like, this fundamental resolution in definition, and how could it differ from previous peace efforts, all of them which have failed so far?
You and I have discussed on this channel, we have to then paint an art. We're aware of the fact that Putin had built up a war chest to do the actions and take the actions that he did in February 2022. We're aware of that. That's either that is selling energy to European countries and beyond, China, etc. That is out there, that is on the table. And also their economy is not in a very good shape at all. even though that may be denied. But if for these reasons, then, is it being mooted? Is Putin then coming to the table, realizing that he then has to end this? This has to stop. We've also got to be aware of, with what happened in the Shanghai Conference Organization, who was there, that they are all, with his links with then Iran, China, North Korea. There is this whole thing of then trying to change the hegemony of America being first, but to then push as they want to be first. It's all in these mix. All of these things are in the background. All we can pray and hope is that there will be a discussion around a table to end this. But we may then suddenly find that Putin then feels that there's fresh energy, fresh wind in his sails, because who he feels is then backing him. We have got to have our eyes everywhere on this, and particularly the influence of China. But as you and I have constantly said, it's where people are buying their energy from. How do you then bring even more sanctions? The European Union are doing that, to then try and stop these actions of Russia and bring them to the knees and bring them to the table. Asima.
Yes, indeed. And also, many multi-layers to this. And also, now looking at Lithuania's strong remarks about this this situation of hosting Putin in Europe, how do this strong remark reflect broader divisions even in like close countries within Europe, like Lithuania, Hungary? And do you think they will continue to engage with Russia diplomatically? They are since engaging with Russia diplomatically, even though the war is ongoing. How do you think about Europe trying to maintain a unifying state? Do you think
it's the number. Sorry to jump in there. It's the number one thing in the fact that if you are pushing propaganda, then you want to create division on the other side to then benefit yourself. But on the other hand, you've got to remember where historically the borders are, how far they are away from Russia, whether they are buffering Russia, the relationships that they'd had. Of course, when the wall came down in 1989, and then the breakup of the Soviet Union, and then countries then seeking independence from that system. That is constantly always in the mix, and this is taking, for them, historically, this is taking time for them to evolve from what we would call a communist system into a more democratic system, into more of a capitalist system. It's all a mix of all those countries, and understandably, the countries are very concerned, because they turn around and say, well, if Putin's done that in invading Ukraine in February 2022, then where else is he going to go? That has always been part of the chatter and the lexicon there. And remember, we've got to throw this in regard to Hungary. Viktor Orban, his own personal history, of Hungary. Viktor Orban, of course, had his run-ins with the Soviet Union, with the communist regime. He is also trying to put first the economy of his country. He also is trying to have good relationships with Russia, as we've said before. Remember, they then get some energy off Russia, and also Hungary is looking at leaving the ICC and membership of that, because they feel that it's very, very politically motivated, and we could say that in regard to other decisions that it makes about other countries, and that's a subject for another matter, and that includes Israel as well. So that is what they're concerned about. But I come back to this. At the end of the day, if we can get these people around the table and to stop this, then that is a good thing, because the way this is happening, otherwise this theater of what is going on, we're going to need to negotiate this, need to get these people around this table, etc. It never happens. They may nearly get there, but it never happens. And you are right, as you have alluded to, and others, we need to then see Zelensky and Putin around a table. That is going to be difficult to get to that point, but we must try to do that to the best of our ability. But you are right, when it sows division, because countries are concerned, as I just said,
Yes.
where their history and where their borders lie. Nasima.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, Mark Sutherland, for joining us and sharing that insight throughout this topic. Now we move to Middle East. 8 trucks carrying fuel, blankets, and food resumed movement from Egypt's Rafah crossing into Gaza after U.S. pressure followed Israel's temporary halt over alleged Hamas truce violations. The Israeli military has said that the ceasefire resumed on Sunday after an attack killed 2 soldiers and prompted airstrikes that Palestinians say killed 26 people, with U.S. President Donald Trump confirming the ceasefire that he brokered is still in place. In related developments, released Israeli hostage Elkanah Bobot returned home and under the hostage deal. He has thanked the supporters outside his home, broke down in tears, and recited a prayer. Hamas has said that it located another hostage's body, but warned that any Israeli escalation could hinder search operations. This is what released Hostana Elka Bobot has said. Now for this discussion, we welcome Matti Zweig. He's a geopolitical expert, joins us live from Tel Aviv. Thank you very much, Matti, for joining us again. Good to see you. Matti, as this question stays as we see this Rafah crossing closes and reopens, but again, the ceasefire in place is so fragile. Is there any trustable source that can be trusted to move the aids across Gaza's people who are in need of this aid? Is there any foundation that can be trusted?
Well, I think you can trust the parts that they can be always trusted. I mean, in this case, we are talking about Israel and we are talking about Egypt. I mean, in the middle of this, you have this terrorist group called Hamas, that they are interfering. They are not fulfilling the points of the agreement. They are attacking the troops of Israel that they redeployed in the Yellow Line, and they are even killing soldiers. So with all the best will of this Israeli side, or even the cooperation of Egypt, it's hard to maintain all the time these things with no cooperation from the Hamas side. So that's what they decided. They decided not to open the Rafah crossing in this moment. And the trucks are waiting. And also from the Israeli side, they will try to continue to give from their side humanitarian aid. And there is also another point here that these trucks, most of them, they are Turkish. They also try to come from sea, and they also come to try from the Rafah crossing, when the Rafah crossing is not exactly for humanitarian aid, but for other things, only for passing people. That's what it was accorded. So also Turkey is doing a very political move with very bad intention of making Israel look that like they don't want to pass humanitarian aid while aiding the bad behavior of Hamas not fulfilling their agreement. So who is going to suffer from this? Of course, the people that don't receive the humanitarian aid. I hope that all the parts involved, like US, Egypt, Israel, also Turkey, and also the others, will put order on this so they can start doing the humanitarian aid in a normal way.
Right. Thank you very much, Matti, for joining us and sharing that insight. Now we move back to Europe. French Justice Minister Gerald Darmanin has addressed the jewelry heist at the Louvre Museum that took place earlier on Sunday morning. The minister stressed that the robbery negatively affected France's image, implying a failure of security services. He further acknowledged the failure to secure the museum while assuring that investigators would soon catch the thieves. The robbers used a furniture hoist to gain access to the Apollo Gallery, which houses royal collections. The masked thieves stole 9 19th century pieces of jewelry, including a crown that was found dropped and damaged while the thieves escaped. France's interior minister has earlier stated that the raid took place in 7 minutes and is believed to have been carried out by an experienced team from individuals belonging to foreign countries. Now for this discussion, we go back to Mark Sutherland. He's a geopolitical expert, joins us live from London. Thank you, Mark, for staying with us. Now, looking at this news, how shocking, how shocked were you about the fact that these thieves could get into the world's most visited museum, and we would expect it to also be highly secured, especially the royal jewels?
Well, there are many museums in France. Maybe these people that committed this heist had actually sat down and watched the film Ocean's 11, who knows, or any other film where artwork is then stolen. But slightly putting the humor aside, this is extremely audacious. There is a ladder that they put up on the outside of the building going up to a balcony, and that particular ladder, that system, you would then take furniture up in the tradition of a number of European cities, whether you have a hook outside the building and then lift things up in tight spaces. But the audacity of this to then go in, I think, and then take the jewelry that they have, and then to escape in the manner that they have, to then get on scooters and off they go, disappearing into the city. The issue that they then have is how, what we would call in British tradition of this kind of thing, how they then fence these things. Are they then sellable? How do you do that? How do you then take out all these particular diamonds? People, depending on where they're fenced, people will then track down and work out where they are. The security is, yes, it is quite shocking. It's quite shocking to all of us in many ways. This is not the first time this kind of thing has actually occurred, and it would need. And I am not supporting any theft or heist of anything like this in this particular manner. What it would be is something that is extremely. They would have had to plan that for a period of time, and then to work that out, and then, as you've said, in broad daylight, extremely daring, taking 7 minutes. Why weren't alarms going off? Where was the security? We can raise all these issues, and I'm sure that all of this will come out when they start to work out how this was done, who was then involved, and then it'll be the usual thing of, well, how many people were there, people on the inside involved in this? I don't know. I'm just throwing out speculation. But you are quite right. It doesn't look good. France is full of many wonderful exhibits like this in its historical past, paintings, etc., and the artwork, and people enjoy going to see those, and they do need to be protected. So time will tell. But as the French minister already said, it doesn't look very good for the French in regard to their security on these matters. Asima.
Yes, indeed. Talking about the French minister admitting that this can have a negative effect on their reputation, how might these high-profile crimes impact a country's international image, and what do you think? What responsibilities do governments have in protecting national symbols?
What you will find is that these museums, these other buildings that have very expensive art, they will regularly talk to each other. They will regularly talk to each other about security issues at certain points, certain times, and especially when these events then take place, because other museums will need to, and other buildings will need to be looking at their own personal security and getting that balance between the fact that you have these beautiful pieces of art that quite rightly talk about previous history. In many countries, of course, all over the world, we've got museums all over the world in countries. They then want to show off these artifacts. They want the public to see them. So this then can raise for various buildings some interesting discussion. We're also aware of when members of the public have gone in and done sprayed paint over beautiful pieces of art in some kind of protest of stupidity. So this also goes on. You want the public to be able to access to enjoy this, but also how do you keep secure within this? As I said, I alluded to Ocean's 11 or any other films like that. In history, there's been some very, very audacious actions taken in regard to this. We've had that a number of years ago in regard to a London heist in the UK, but all of the people were then caught. So the French police, the authorities, will be doing whatever they can, because it is down to the fact, as you said, looking at their own image. They will want to make sure that they're secure, and they will seek to get these crooks as quickly as possible. Assume.
Yes. Thank you very much, Mark, for joining us and sharing that insight. That was Mark Sutherland. He's a geopolitical expert, joined us live from London. Now we move on to our next news. A cargo plane has collided with a security patrol vehicle and pushed it into the ocean after skidding off the runway at Hong Kong Airport. 2 airport security staff were not breathing when rescued from the water and were later confirmed dead by the authorities. The executive director of operations at Airport Authority Hong Kong has said that the security patrol car was in charge of patrolling the north runway. He has further added that the vehicle was operating in its usual area and did not rush onto the runway. Let's listen in.
我哋喺現場見到一架飛機機身斷開咗2節，喺海上面載浮載沉，並有4名機組人員喺打開咗嘅機艙門度等待救援。消防立即派員進行拯救，協助機上面嘅4名機組人員利用逃生滑梯離開機艙。另一方面，我哋得知咗有一輛巡邏車輛受到事故影響波及，就墮海。消防人員亦都展開咗水上同埋水下嘅救援工作，同時亦都派員喺陸上面，包括北跑道兩邊分別500米嘅範圍裏邊進行搜索。最終，消防潛水員喺大約40分鐘之後，確定到墮海巡邏車輛嘅位置，其後喺車上面揾到2名被。
The Boeing 747 also fell into the water and was partially submerged, but all 4 crew members on board escaped. Authorities are still investigating the exact cause of this crash, with fever runway conditions, the aircraft and aircrew part of the investigation. Now we move on to our next news. The Chinese military has strongly condemned Australia's action after accusing Australian military aircraft of illegally entering Chinese airspace. In a statement released today, the Chinese armed forces called on Australia to immediately cease its infringement provocations. The Chinese military has further claimed that Australian aircraft had illegally invaded its airspace, specifically over the Paracel Islands, a disputed territory in the South China Sea. The Paracel Islands are claimed by both China and Vietnam, with tensions frequently rising over military presence and territorial